My name is Andrew Peterson. I'm an author of fantasy novels.
I'm Chris Wall. I'm a producer.
Instead of the books kind of fizzling, they actually like grew in excitement.
Really? Is that even possible?
That's kind of the end of the story, but it was not the end of the story.
And then 2020 happened.
It was kind of miraculous. I remember telling my brother about it, and he was like, how is this even possible? I grew up reading fantasy novels, and I was that kid that was always getting in trouble for reading the books that he wasn't supposed to be reading, and would literally climb under my bed after I was supposed to be asleep and just read. I really was wanting to put something in the world that other families could read along, where they could feel like I was an author that they could trust, an author that took seriously how important it is to tell stories to children, and would like honor that position. It took me 5 years to write book one because, you know, draft after draft after draft, world building, all the stuff that went into it. Book one came out and Waterbrook called me and said, congratulations, you're a published author. And I was like, thank you. And they said, let's talk about book two. And I was like, all right, let's talk about book two. And they said, we're thinking that 6 months, does that give you time enough to turn it in? And I was like, excuse me? Like, I hadn't even started book two yet.
Okay, so I was one of the guys that in college got introduced to this thing called Veggie Tales. I was on like a spring break, and one of the friends we were with was like, hey, I think uncle is making this kid show called Veggie Tales. You guys should check it out. And all of us college kids were like, that is funny. In 2004, got a call from the head of studio who I'd worked with previously and invited to join, and moved to Nashville, Tennessee.
I kind of came in through the back door into the publishing world. Music kind of like led me into conversations with the publisher, Waterbrook. And they were awesome, and they took a huge risk publishing a nerdy singer-songwriter who wanted to like branch out and do this totally other thing. And now I had 2 books worth of fans and readers who were on board and wanting to know what was going to happen. And then I got the call that they weren't going to renew the contract, and it was heartbreaking. We had like a book series where the original publisher owned books 1 and 2, and books 3 and 4 were up for grabs.
So we needed a silly song for Larry for this Wizard of Oz video, and I'd been introduced to this kids project and this guy named Andrew Peterson and his friend Randall. And so I reached out and I said, hey, I don't mean to be like offensive, but would you be interested in writing silly songs for Larry? And around about that time, Andrew turned to me and said, hey, I'm also an author, and handed me the very first copy of the Wingfeather Saga, On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. Went home. I have 6 children, and so I started with my oldest 3 and like, hey guys, we're gonna read this together.
Chris was like, knew what he was doing, was this incredible producer, and like contacted me later and said, our family read those books and we loved him. And I was like, hey, you wanna make a movie?
And I was full-time at Veggie Tales, which then was part of DreamWorks Animation, and we were kind of just blowing and going and making lots of good stuff there. And so we just kind of kept touch over the years on that, and just as friends and colleagues, nothing really formal.
Meeting Chris was kind of like this light bulb went on for me, and I was just like, if there was the right person in charge, somebody that really loved the stories and knew what they were doing, this could be really cool. And not just a movie, but maybe it was a series, something that would stretch its legs so that you could actually like really tell the full story. Finally, by the time we got to book 4, I had always wanted to see these books in hardback. I'd always wished that they could be jammed with illustrations because it was a very visual story. And so we thought, let's do a Kickstarter campaign to make book 4 kind of go out with a bang and publish this deluxe edition of book 4. And we launched the Kickstarter campaign, and it quickly became the most successful fiction Kickstarter in history, which blew my mind. But it just kind of demonstrated like what an incredible fan base the books had at that point. So it was one of the like most gratifying moments of my whole life, was to get to like instead of the books kind of fizzling, they actually like grew in excitement, and I was able to release the big final book in the way that I dreamed of. And so I thought, okay, cool. that's kind of the end of the story, but it was not the end of the story.
And then in 2015, we got to the end of VeggieTales, where it was like, hey, this has been a great run, 20-something years at that point, and time to go look at other things. And so DreamWorks had invited, hey, we've got opportunities out here. We were in Nashville, of course, and they said, do you want to move out to LA and come join us and help make some stuff out here? And I was like, man, I don't know what we want to do. And so my wife and I spent a lot of time in prayer, just kind of trying to determine what the next steps should be.
To my great shock, he was like, I think we're supposed to help you do the Wingfeather Saga.
As a producer, most of the times you're trying to find a way to option material and get it away from the authors who might get in your sauce and kind of mess things up. And I had seen Andrew as such a collaborator, and that's kind of the Nashville thing, that his ability to get with musicians and other creatives and make something really special.
Chris and his family jumped in head first into this crazy idea to do a Kickstarter campaign to raise the money to make a short film of the Wingfeather Saga, which we would then use to pitch to studios to see if we could drum up some way to make a series.
One of the things that I had to encounter right away is animation, you may not know this, but is expensive. It costs a lot of money. What could we do to try to figure out a way to bring Wingfeather Saga to the screen that had visual craft advantages that were also economical, like that made sense? That began with a conversation with my good friend Keith Lango, who is an animation supervisor and experimenter, who had always challenged the notion of how animation gets made. And we began to work on this really innovative paint, living, hold, stop motion style. We set off in 2016 with a Kickstarter and had some ideas of what we could do to make it look really cool. And Keith was on, and then my friend Tom Owens, who I'd worked with at DreamWorks, he had come from years of How to Train Your Dragon, was head of story on How to Train Your Dragon 2, and so knew really compelling storytelling. The Kickstarter went live, and in the first 48 hours, we got $100,000. It was crazy. We were shocked. And by the end of that campaign, we'd raised $265,000 from over 3,000 people that were like, yes, bring something to screen with this amazing story. And so we did. And so we got to go produce a short film that really proved out the storytelling and something visual that hadn't been seen before. So in early 2018, with our short film, our little pilot in hand, we began booking meetings all over LA with every studio that you all know of.
I remember we flew out to meet with one of the big streaming services in California, and it was it's hard to go there and not feel intimidated, you know? And so I'm there kind of like walking around going, oh my goodness, we're in the place where it all happens. And we had walk through the security and go into the conference room, and in walks an exec, and he's like, tell me about the Wingfeather Saga, kid. And so all eyes turned to me, and we've got all our materials, and it's like, gulp. Well, it's this story about 3 kids, and it was like the worst pitch in the history of pitches. What I want to say is this is a story that is, it's whimsical and it's fun, but it's also like got a lot of heart. And my goal is to make you cry as much as you laugh. And that doesn't really work in like a big conference room table meeting when they want to know who's the bad guy and how does this work. So anyway, it was a super intimidating process, but my spirit never felt quite at ease with it. We had lots of meetings, talked to a lot of different people, and it was just, the needle between it's gonna happen and it's never gonna happen swung back and forth like completely 1,000 times over several years of meetings with people and working on it. But we really, really believed that we had something special and had this opportunity to put something out into the world that would be more than just entertainment.
Everybody responded the same. What in the world? This is beautiful. I've never seen anything like this, and over this kind of thing. We also found ourselves in a weird window where those same studios, those platforms, all started acquiring content, where they were saying, yeah, we like Wingfeather Saga, but we would acquire it and then go make it. And we might hire you to help make it, but it would be our thing.
When I first approached Chris, I was like, I'm not interested. I would rather not sell the rights at all if the rights were going to go to somebody who's just going to take the story and do their own thing with it. Like, it's precious to me.
Neither of us felt like that was the responsible thing to do, that he'd worked so hard to tell this story in this authentic way, and we felt like we needed to be curators to make sure that it stayed on that path, and to just sell that to a studio that could then go do whatever felt like the wrong path to us.
I want to be involved to kind of like steward the story.
That turned into, we should go theatrical. We should start to think about movies. So we worked on a series and then thought, I think it could work as movies, because there you can have more control over what you make.
And so at some point, I remember we bumped into somebody on the Waterbrook team, and they were like, hey, would you ever be open to letting us buy books 3 and 4 from you, and so that we could, put them all in one place? And that was pretty gratifying, I have to say.
We worked really hard and made a screenplay for that, and kind of started meeting with studios to talk about feature films.
Now Waterbrook has, is a subsidiary of Penguin Random House, which means they have the New York offices kind of involved. And so that led to this surreal experience where after all these years I was able to re-sign the books over to not just Waterbrook, but Penguin Random House.
And had some great meetings all through 2019 with a number of big distributors, and it was looking really promising.
And with the agreement that they were going to re-release all the books with brand new covers in hardback with all new illustrations. We had all our marketing plans and this big push that people had been working on for months, for this big re-release of the series. And then 2020 happened.
And then 2020 happened.
I remember I was on tour overseas in the UK when I got kind of sent home because of lockdown, and remember thinking like, oh man, the news of the world has just destroyed every plan that anybody had for the marketing of this book series, along with all the other sadness that was happening in the world. That was my own private sadness. It was like, oh man. And then I was like, well, I can't tour for a while. Maybe I'll go on Facebook and just do a read-along for anybody who wants to read along. And so I went on Facebook Live and kind of announced to people that I was going to be reading every night 30 minutes of the first book of the Wingfeather Saga. And the first night there were 99,000 viewers.
That took like wildfire.
Like I told my wife, I was like, it's like me reading to an arena of people every night from our living room. And it ended up being like the most perfect way to tell people about the story. It was like there were so many families that were stuck at home, hungry for stories to share with their kids.
It was amazing to see thousands and thousands of families tune in every night to hear this story read aloud and to follow along in their books as the rest of the world was having all kinds of complicated things happen, that this really great family story was available.
And I wasn't sure if I was even allowed to do book 2, and Penguin Random House was like asking me, will you please read book 2 on Facebook? And so it became a thing. So I spent all of 2020 reading all 4 books online, and it will remain one of the bright spots in my whole life. It was just such a joy.
At that same time, we got introduced to a new opportunity. It was coming out from the guys that had done VidAngel. We're now starting a new thing called Angel Studios.
We began to realize, hey, there's this potential that there could be more original content coming from them, and I wonder if the Wingfeather Saga could finally find a home there.
We began talking with them and understanding how they would work, and one of the things we found that was so delightful is they said, oh no, you maintain all creative control, you keep all of your property, we're just going to help you distribute and market it. You make what you love and what you think is great, we're going to help you get it into families' homes and for more families to find it. And that was like this wave of like, really? Is that even possible?
It was thrilling because it felt like the timing of it was perfect. It was kind of miraculous. I remember telling my brother about it, and he was like, how is this even possible that you guys have found partners for the Wingfeather Saga that are have broad distribution, but also are allowing you guys to tell the story the way it needs to be told. I just couldn't believe it.
It is the most amazing thing to be in a position now where we can bring this to the screen.
The fans have been amazing because they've spread the word. There's been this amazing word of mouth. I get emails from people saying that they donated the books to their local library, and so the fans have been done the heavy lifting of sharing this story with people, and they've given us the courage to keep going.
We have gotten to journey with them, asking really hard questions about Wingfeather Saga and what makes it work. That when people tell us Lord of the Rings, Narnia, Wingfeather Saga. What's the association? Why do fans find these so connected? That we can't just presume that. Let's actually try to understand it.
That's been huge. And then they kind of put their money where their mouth was. We could not believe how many people jumped on board to help us bring this thing to the screen.
We're so thrilled to give kids and families the imaginative world of Wingfeather Saga, of Aerwiar, of all these great characters brought to life in a multi-season series that we can't wait to create.
And so to see that there was this like not just an appetite, but a hunger to see the Wingfeather Saga and other stories like the Wingfeather Saga make it to the screen is something that only the fans of the series could have done.